Hello, all. Welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh, and today I have with me a very special guest, Jen Swift. Jen, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, actually. I'm excited.
Excellent, excellent. So as the audience knows, I always like to warm up our authors before we get on. So we had a really nice conversation. So we're hoping that warms us up for these questions. So we'll get started right away, per usual. Jennifer, what has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Um, Weird, I think. I don't know if I had the standard writing experience that everybody
We
else
hear
has.
that a lot. We hear that a lot.
Yeah, maybe there isn't a
I don't
standard
know if
writing
there
process.
is. I don't know if there is one at this point.
Yeah, I think we just assume that there's some sort of way we're
Yeah, yeah.
supposed to do it. But I got fired from a job like in 2012 and sort of went, well, I'm unemployed now, so I really need to fill my days with something. And I had this idea from way back when, and I started writing it, and I didn't plan anything because I had really no idea what I was doing other than how to actually write words. So I'd never written anything like anything before. So I just went, okay, this is fine, can totally do this. We thought I'm going to have this whole story about getting onto this ship and going out into space, and it's going to be epic. And then by the time I'd written the first book, they basically had only just got to this ship. And I'm going, this did not pan out like I expected it
I
to.
know that feeling.
Yeah. So I think the journey is it's a strange one. I've gotten better since the first foray out into it, like 17 drafts later of the
Oh,
first
wow.
book. Yeah. I think I was so scared about putting something out into the world that wasn't good. And I was so paranoid. I think it took me like 2 solid years to write that book. Um, and again, that was back in 2012. It was a long time ago. And I see people now sort of bashing out books so quickly, and they're going, in the last 6 months I've published 4 books, and I'm going, how? I've written two in like 10 years. Maybe I'm not doing as well, but no, I'm getting there. But yeah, it's been a weird one.
It's interesting that you mentioned drafts, and my wife last night, we were at dinner and then we're walking and I'm like, she goes, tomorrow's the day, right? Because I set a week aside to do my second draft after first draft edits. And I was like, yep, tomorrow's the day. And like I promised myself, and I'm just like dreading it today because I'm just like, I've never had to do a draft two before. So I definitely know that feeling. And she asked me like, how many
Yeah,
drafts are you gonna do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, Mallory Kuhn told me she did 26 for Among Thieves, but everybody's loving it, so I'm like,
yeah.
maybe it's 30, maybe we shelve it for 10 years and come back to it. Like, so I just think it's funny that you said that, you had that many, because I definitely know that feeling, especially with, book one.
Yeah, oh God. I mean, yeah, I think all my everything I've ever written since starting novels has been just draft after draft after draft. Because the first one I read somewhere once, and it was the best piece of advice I ever got for finishing a book. And it was every day, Monday to Friday, write 1,500 words, no more, no less. But the caveat is you are not allowed to go back and read anything that you've written previously. You just have to write your 1,500 words from the last sentence you're up to. And when you get to a good stopping point around that 1,500, you stop. So there's no self editing. You don't spend half your time going back and checking things. You just keep writing. And I did that, and I got to the end, and I left it a week so I could come back to it with fresh eyes. I started reading it again a week later, and I was like, this makes no sense. Like, because it's something I wrote like a week earlier, I hadn't gone back
Yeah,
and read, so I completely
yeah.
forgot. But it meant that I kept adding things in that I wouldn't normally have added in there. And I got to go back and go, actually, I can fill this in, and I can make this connect over here, and it made for a more interesting book. But it was the only thing that actually got me to finish it, because I don't have the organizational skills in my brain to make me just sit down and write all day. Like, I find that so difficult sometimes. So having that target was really good. But yeah, it just when you first read it after that, I just read so badly.
Yeah,
You're going, I spelled it like what? Like,
yeah.
why? Where's all these red wavy lines coming from?
It's so funny that you say that, because I like, my friend asked me, goes, what's the number? Because he threw it back at me after we got done recording this week. He goes, what's the number one advice you would give? So I said the same thing, because that's the only way that I finished my, I have 20, oh my gosh, like five or six 20 to 25,000, word drafts, and I got lost because I kept trying to edit. So I think that is very, very valuable advice.
Yeah,
Because that's the only thing that helped me. But then people ask me like, can I read draft one? I'm like, no, because it's three different books. So I definitely agree with you. I did things at the beginning that I didn't do in the middle. because like I was
Yeah,
getting better, and I was deciding not to edit, and then I'm like, well, I just had to edit draft 2 just to actually now be, at the end what I was thinking
yeah,
the product was going to be. So I totally agree. I think that's very, very valuable advice. So
yeah. Like no book is finished when because I see a lot as well. I'm part of a couple of Facebook groups for authors, and you see a lot of people posting the fiction like just finished writing. It says the end, of celebrating, and like I finished, and I'm going, oh,
yeah, little do you know.
yeah, a little bit further to go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I think the process. I do actually enjoy the process. I act like it's such hard work, but I read because I get to I know because I get to reread these stories, and I sometimes have forgotten what's going on. So when it comes to editing, like I'm halfway. Well, I say I'm halfway. I'm very nearly finished with the third book of the series
Oh,
now.
cool.
I know. Um, and when it comes to editing that, it means I'm going to go back and read the first book and then read the second book and then read what I've got of the third book and then start the edit on it. It's a big process, but it gives me the chance to go back and revisit this little world that I built, which I think is really important
Yeah, yeah.
because as people, when you write something, you are building your own world, and those little characters that live in there are kind of your friends. It sounds really sad, but they
Oh, a very
you
intimate
know
relationship.
yeah, you know them better than anybody else knows them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so getting to go back and revisit it multiple times is a wonderful thing. I love it.
No, I totally agree. My friend was talking about like they're my kids, like I created
Yeah,
them and I, try to nurture them. He goes, sometimes I screw them over because that's the story, but he goes, I still care about them. I still want,
yeah.
what's best for them in the story. So yeah.
Like we make some harsh decisions with the people that we care.
I don't want to ruin anybody's hopes for my first debut, but I am so mean. Like I get done, I'm just like I was like saying to my wife, I was like, I don't know if I should go to like therapy or like, like or if I need, I don't know what I need, but I'm like,
Who
I
hurt
feel
you?
bad, like I feel bad. But like I do tell people that I'm like, I don't know, like I love Cobra Kai on Netflix,
Yes.
and they have such great redemption arcs. And
Yeah.
I was watching the last season 3, and I'm so excited for season 4. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, more than anything, I was like, I think people will like that I have redemption arcs.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, how after book 1, like how are these horrible people going to get redeemed? And then, like that's like the whole theme.
Yeah.
So as mean as I am, I think by the end people will be like, oh, he's actually a good guy. But I
Yeah. You've got
definitely
to knock them
understand that.
right down before you can bring them back
Yeah,
up.
I
Like they've got
definitely
to hit the
understand that.
lowest of the
Yeah,
low.
yeah. Otherwise, there's no story, right? I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's just the human condition,
Yeah. I torture, I kill, I do all the
Like,
terrible things that you're not allowed to do in real life
yeah, yeah.
to these people that I care about.
And I think that's hard to explain to people, like you're an
Yeah.
author and like what do you do? And you're like, that's what one of my friends the other day was tired of. She was tired of telling people that. And she said that. She's like, well, I torture, I maim, I kill people, And like, they were like, what? She's like, well, I'm an author. She's like, I'm just talking about what I'm doing to my characters right now. And they're like, what are you talking about? But then you talk to another author, they're like, yeah, I get you, like
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty atypical. That's really funny. Yeah, I definitely understand that one. So this kind of gets me into, you had already talked a little bit about it, so I'm really glad. Which element do you think is the hardest for you to write in terms of science fiction? Like,
I
is it
think
the technology? Is it the trying to, pretend like we're in the future? People have
well,
answered this a little bit differently each time, but
so I mean, mainly I live in a fantasy world anyway. My brain functions as a fantasy brain, and I find it very difficult to focus on real life things because it's so
amen.
real life and it's boring. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think this is why we write,
yeah, yeah.
because we have these insane worlds in our heads. The thing I think I find more, I can't even speak anymore. The thing the thing that is the most difficult is trying to come up with tech that's not already either in our world that I don't know about yet because I'm not scientifically minded, or you come up with something like that's a genius idea, and then you watch an episode of Star Trek from 10 years ago and
Yeah,
they're doing it
yeah.
already, and you're like, oh, so that was already in there, wasn't it? It was in my brain. I just saved it for later.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but
Leftovers.
yeah, I think yeah, and that's my big problem because I watched so much science fiction when I was a kid, and right through my teenage years, like sci-fi raised me from Star Trek to Red Dwarf and all of the in
Oh, Red
between.
Dwarf. Oh,
It's so good. And then, but then you're writing and things start happening, and you go like, this is great. I've come up with a really good. Oh wait, no, I think they did that on Star Trek. So I'm just gonna have to delete that. But it's such a huge influence, that it's really hard to switch your brain off from that stuff because it's stuff that you enjoy.
yeah.
Um, I think I've tried to honor science fiction in that way, and I think it works. I think it works because that's the thing for me. If you come up with something completely different every time, it doesn't always fit in the genre anymore.
Yeah, no, totally.
There's a lot of sort of, I guess, tropes that go with science fiction, and I do like to hit them because I have a lot of respect for them, and I
Yeah,
think that that's what makes science fiction good. That's what makes it nostalgic for me.
yeah,
When I read books that sort of harken back to the days of original Trek, and it's cheesier, but it's great.
yeah, yeah. I
That's
just
what
I think he just made so many good points there, so it's hard to dissect them. But
yeah, I do just keep going all at once,
uh,
don't I? And then it's like done.
well, it's fine because it gives me more to talk about. But I think you're totally right. Like anytime you see a Han Solo, a Hot Shot pilot, Battlestar Galactica, Red Dwarf, yeah, any of those, like I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like you got me.
Yeah.
Or the
I'm hooked.
bounty hunter. Yeah, I'm like Mondo is so incredible to me because it is like I like that type of gruff bounty hunter. It was remind me of the Wild West. Like John Wayne, more like Clint Eastwood. Like those westerns. And I just, yeah. And then when Gina Carano came out there just like swinging, I was like, oh, that's awesome. It reminded me of Princess Leia, because I don't think people give her enough credit. Like she literally from day, like the first minute she's on screen, like she's shooting stormtroopers and like she's there. Her presence is there.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you're right. Like people, and we were talking about this a couple weeks ago in a private chat, me and some authors, and Mallory Quinn and I talked about too. Like people come for the tropes for fantasy and sci-fi. So
Yeah. 100%.
and the tech, and I think it's cool that you said you have different roots and you like to show them, and I do that same thing. I actually literally write certain things. I'll use certain names that might be from certain things, not like maybe the main character but secondary characters.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I find those fun. Like I find
Yeah.
those so much fun, and then I look up and I'm like, my interview like this, and the author's like, yeah, I did this because I'm like, that's so cool that I recognize that. And yeah, so I definitely think that's a really cool idea, is putting little Easter eggs in there. Yeah.
I mean, I named a character that was a nothing character in the first book that has somehow become like this massive character through the series. and I named them, their surname came from a TV show I used to watch when I was younger. It's a British TV show. Can't actually remember the name of it, but I just remember there was a guy, he was a doctor, and he was called Ben Harper. And I thought, I really like the name Harper, so I'm going to have that because I want people to know that I love that show. Or I used I use surnames from shows that I like. So there's a character called Underwood.
Oh, cool.
That literally comes from The Stand and how much I adore Stephen King.
Yeah.
Maybe not the new TV series as much.
Yeah. Talk about a good book though.
Oh my God. I read it when I was 9, and it was the biggest book I'd ever read, because before then it was Goosebumps.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and then I gave The Stand a try because my mum had been watching the miniseries and it looked good. And I'd gone on holiday with my great auntie Joyce, and we'd found this book, and I'm like, sure, my mum would let me read it. Yeah, I'm 9. And then I think I devoured that book in a weekend, and I was hooked. That was my all-time favorite. The Stand is just top notch for me. I don't know how I've gotten to my favorite books now. Where were we? What were we talking about?
That's fine. That's what I said. Meandering is part of the journey. So I mean, Tolkien said it best, right? There and back again. So we'll get there eventually. No, I think that
on Lord of the Rings as well.
whole separate one. We talked about doing that. We're talking about doing panels. So just coming on and doing an episode and just doing panels for people that want to talk about Tolkien or or different things.
Oh my
so
God.
we'll have to have you back.
I could do it for Star Trek, but I warn you now, I will rant.
Star Trek would be fun too.
I can do Trek panels, but I will rant because I get really angry about certain aspects of Star Trek.
Fair. Well, I think a lot of people do. Like there's certain things that. Sorry, guys. Quick preview from our Star Trek panel. I definitely.
yeah. Let's do this. Come on.
There's like certain things that I'm like, I don't want to ruin it for people because I know I have some things we're gonna talk about later here in some other interviews. But I definitely. I guess I'll say I definitely agree with you, and I'm really anxious to see your thoughts on them later because I'm wondering if we have the same issues with it. So
I hope so. I like sharing issues with people.
Well, it's like Star Trek, and I was trying to explain to somebody like, I like a very wide range of sci-fi, but when I had seen your Twitter, and then checked out your books on Amazon, I was like, oh, that's just so much more what I want, and there's only so much military sci-fi, and I know people are going to kill me for saying there's only so much military sci-fi that you can go through, and it's like fantasy, like I was so tired of the same old. And like I want a story that's unique like that, that really has, still those, science fiction elements, but that looks from a different perspective and a different issue and actually has a
Yeah,
different story. Because there's so much in science fiction that you're just like, oh my gosh, if they go to Mars one more time, like I will die,
yeah.
or
I mean,
whatever.
I think that was the original aim, when I sort of came up with the later concept. The original concept was very different. When I came with the later concept, it was very much, I liked the idea of having your Starfleet type thing where you've got your captains and you've got your commanders and your lieutenants and whatnot. But how would that look to someone who wasn't a part of it?
Yeah.
um, because yeah, it's all well and good that they all get to leave, but there's still a bunch of people that are having to fight to get on this ship. They're not part of the crew particularly. They're not rich enough to buy a place, so they are the outsiders now.
Yeah.
And how does the world look from their perspective? Was one that I thought would be an interesting way to look at it.
And I'm gonna say that I find that like a similar interesting idea, because I think like Starship Troopers is one of those, right, where you get the grunts, and I think
Yeah,
that's why people relate to it is,
yeah,
and that's the only way for them to get, out of their country or off planet, is to join the military. And I
yeah,
think so many people related to that concept. So I think it's, the same for your books, as so many people can relate to that story, because they can't afford, to go here or X, Y, and Z if that were the
yeah,
case. And I think it, you guys both bring up a very good point, of this, this existential crisis that we're seeing, that it's, maybe that's not a normal thing that people talk about in sci-fi, but it's a normal thing that people deal with every day.
yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
cool
very,
to,
it's important. I mean,
yeah,
you've got, I think the very premise of the story is that you are going to die if you don't escape.
yeah,
That is just the crux of it. Maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but this is your last chance to get off this planet.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to die here. And it's the idea of how far are you actually willing to go to do that. And I think that's something that people explore quite a lot these days. Like, how far are you willing to go to protect yourself and your family?
yeah. Well, it's like I had a conversation with a couple of people recently, and my best friend and I talk about this all the time. Like we have our zombie apocalypse plan down to a T,
Same.
and like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like,
Hmm.
and then we have our secondary. It's just fun for us, because we're writers and we love
Yeah.
stories. And he's a huge Walking Dead fan. I'm more of a fantasy fan, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Or sci-fi. Like I think it's interesting to talk about that, because it's gets me in the mind of my characters and things. Like, well, what would they do? Like same thing. Like if they're in this, this hard situation, like what are you willing to do? And I think it's funny. Like Red Dawn, we always compared it to like Red Dawn, and like
Mm.
the kids go right to like the Walmart, or whatever, like the hunt, to get hunting rifles, things like that, and then they kind of leave. And there were a couple. Totally feel so bad. I'm gonna blank on the Netflix movie, but it was so good. It was like what would happen. It was basically like Red Dawn with aliens. So it was like this group of people that are in Australia, and there's like this group of like rugby players on this professional team, and like literally during their game, all of a sudden like Earth gets like taken over by aliens. And it was a great movie. And I was like, it brought together like so many, like you said earlier, like nostalgic memories from Red Dawn,
Yeah.
but then it
Yeah.
was like in a new way. And I mean, it was like really good. And I'm gonna have to like look it up now so I can put it in the show description, but I'll send it to you. It was really good though. But it's like the same type
Yeah.
of thing, like using these tough situations to really say like, what would you really do in this situation? So I think that's a really cool concept.
Yeah. I do enjoy exploring that.
So you kind of talked a little bit about, so how did you come up with this idea for your book, in terms of like the arc specifically?
Well, so okay, there was this time I was with my friend, and I think I was about 18 years old, so it's quite young compared to where I am now. And we were just hanging out. He was an artist. We were just hanging out in his room, and we'd had a couple of drinks, and we like to obviously talk about insane ideas. And he came up with this thing for like a YouTube video. And how cool would it be if you focused on these two people who were a part of a crew who were really bad at what they did, and they got put on like a little mini ship and sent out to check the whole outside of the ship and make sure everything's okay. But when they did that, and while they were out there, the ship crashes, and you're just the only two left. And we built this entire solar system for it. There was all these different types of planets,
That's cool.
and it is so far removed from what the books actually became, but the original idea would never have come about had we not have sat there and drawn all this stuff out. Because originally the whole story was meant to be they're going to get on this ship and there's going to be all these crazy things happening, and there's just going to be these two people who are really terrible at everything they do. It was a comedy. We thought it'd be hilarious, very Red Dwarf-esque. As it turns out, I can't write comedy. I don't know how. I tried. It was terrible. And it suddenly became a more serious look at sci-fi when I sat down to actually put this idea on paper. And it went through so many different iterations. I mean, we'd had a script written for a pilot TV series. We tried all different ways of getting these ideas down, before I finally sat there and went, do you know what? This is the only way I'm actually going to get this out of my brain, because it's been tormenting me for years.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't stop thinking about it though.
No,
because this whole idea that you've got these characters and you spend so long sort of building them up, and who are they, and why are they called that, and what are they doing, what's their purpose. And it was nice to get to a point now where they've almost reached the end of their journey, and I know them now. They're not just riding around in my head anymore. I don't have to remember that information all the time because it's written down now.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest relief of writing. But yeah, the idea came, oh God, so long ago, and it was so ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, if I could name the number of ideas I've had while drinking with my buddies, and then the next day started writing them.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, there was one night we decided to put the world to rights, and we wrote down everything. We came up with the most amazing plan to fix the planet.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah, and I woke up the next day and it was just a piece of paper with scribbles. But we'd read this to each other, like I'd written stuff down and I read it back. And I'm looking at him going, this isn't even words.
Maybe you guys just create a new language at the same time.
I think we did, yeah.
Fomorian or something like that.
Yeah.
I just think it's so funny that you said that, because like I've been doing my fantasy world now since I was probably like 14. I read Forgotten Realms and I started to do Forgotten Realms and I switched it and I added some things and I was like, oh, I'll do my own. But then, man, I think I was probably, I don't even remember what it was really, but I was probably like 27 or 28, and my buddy and I were all hanging out and with everybody, and we were at the bonfire and I'm drinking and he's talking to me, and we got to talking philosophically about like basically like light versus dark and yin and yang and all these things. And all of a sudden the next day I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I was like, that's what my fantasy world is missing. And it turned into this huge philosophical debate within the whole thing now. And then I got all these ideas, so I told him the next day, I was like, you just like saved my entire fantasy world by bringing up this. He's like, well, that had nothing to do with it. I go, but it does in this world now, and I just think it's funny the kind of ideas that you can come up with. So now everybody's gonna go grab some scotch.
Once you start spitballing with someone else,
yeah,
and once someone else starts getting involved, you can make something really spectacular. Because there are certain things in this third book that I don't know how to write because I've never experienced them, and I've never really spent a lot of time researching them. But I have a friend who is a bit of a buff in that area, and has spent decades of his life researching that kind of thing. And we sat in a room literally about 2 weeks ago, and I told him the whole concept from start to finish for this trilogy. I told him every aspect. This character does this one does this, these are friends, these hate each other. And then I got him up to the point where I was at and I'm like, she'll go. Like, how does this work now? Sort of, how do I do this? And he's going, well, you need this here and this here. There's got to be something there. There's got to be a reason for that. And I'm going, okay, yeah, no, this is great. Keep going. But it put me in a position where I could literally point by point plan the final section of the trilogy. And I'd already planned it out. And then when I replanned it and I looked at it again, I was like, this is so much better. Yeah. This is going to be the best I've ever written of anything. I'm really excited. I'm not even written it yet. Like halfway through. I'm so excited to get it finished.
Well, that's awesome. I do think it's important too to let people know, like I do that all the time. I'm like, I want to do this for urban fantasy, but I need somebody who knows Native American, mythology and religion, and I haven't met that person yet. So I'm like, well, I'll shove that idea. And then I got this one idea where I'm really actively looking for a Roman military historian, so that I don't even care if I told people, I'm like, tell them, like, I don't even care if they want to be co-author, like I don't care. I'm like, I just want to be able to get this idea, and it needs to be authentic for
Yeah.
historical fantasy and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. I think you bring up a really good point. It's like if you need help, like find it. There's plenty of people out there, that want to talk about those kind of things, or want to,
Yeah.
they get the same thing from that conversation that that we do. Even if it's not, even if they're not an author. And I think that's a really important thing, is to be able to find resources in people. And there's plenty
Yeah.
out there, but.
Well, he enjoyed the conversation to the point where he now wants to help. Because I've got another series planned. I know.
Oh, cool.
And it's more of a fantasy series, this one, because
Oh,
I
cool.
like to delve in both, but I like the idea of if you think super futuristic world, but still with a basis in fantasy. So you've still got kings, queens, elves, orcs,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but hyper fantasy
Yeah.
and hyper sci-fi. So I think the most I can liken it to is like Asgard. Really old style world,
Yeah.
old clothing, like the high fantasy stuff, but with super technological stuff hanging out.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like that. So
Oh,
there
I
is a
totally do.
yeah, it's gonna be, but because it's gonna be an epic thing as well. He wants to get involved in that. And I'm like, yeah, please come on board.
Yeah,
I could use your expertise after what
yeah.
you just did. And yeah, come on board. That's cool.
Well, it's like He-Man, like Masters of the Universe. Like I was just watching one of the newer cartoons that was like brilliant, by the way. There's like a newer one that's a little more kiddish, but one of them was like for the adult fans from back in the day, and I mean it's just been brilliant. Um, and I was thinking about that same thing, because I'm like, I love Asgard, I love He-Man, Master of the Universe, like this. I'm like, why do they have swords if they're have all this high tech stuff, but like, I don't know, I think it's really cool. And yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think there needs to be more out there. I think honestly, I was telling my buddy, I said, we had a conversation about that. I said, I think that's going to be one of those things in the future, like it's going to be like its
Yeah.
own genre,
I
it's going
definitely
to be
think it
like,
is.
yeah, like the melding of the two, which
I think that
they get all
Marvel
the best
helps.
parts. Yeah,
Yeah. Marvel helps because it's really gotten people into the idea of technology and magic mixing
yeah, yeah,
together, which is basically what sort of sci-fi and fantasy represent. And Marvel have sort of smushed it together in a way that's really nice. So
yeah,
you can watch sort of Doctor Strange and get into the whole world of magic and sorcery, and it's old, and they're wearing robes, and they've got old dusty tomes, and they're reading them, and it's amazing. But then you've got Iron Man, who's in a literal suit of technology,
yeah.
and they mash together, and it's amazing. And I
No,
think
it's
that
totally.
concept needs to be spread now. More
Yeah, yeah,
people need it. It's
yeah,
got to be. It's amazing. It's the best concept in the world.
yeah, yeah.
I love Marvel. I don't know if you can tell.
No, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like like Warhammer. My buddy and I were talking about that, and like I talked about making another series for sci-fi, but like making him. I don't want to give anything away for my books, but like like I talked about doing what like Brandon Sanderson did, and like going to a point in the future.
Hmm.
And I thought, how I was thinking the same thing. I thought, how cool would that be to do like a more magical version of Warhammer. And where like you literally have like the same classes, everything, like you still
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
priest
yeah.
thing. But what would happen if I just think that idea is cool, like like you take those fantasy elements, but then like connect them with the sci-fi ones, and it's like you just get such cool things that you can do with it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it'd be really cool in the future if yeah, it melded more together and could explore, because you're exploring different concepts,
Yeah.
like completely different themes. So maybe some older ones that are updated a little bit more. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, you have your standard fantasy sort of trope of going on a big epic journey.
yeah, yeah,
Um, the world's a much smaller place when you've got all this technology. So how does that look now?
yeah, yeah,
What's changed? How does that trope fit into both?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna
Um,
definitely recommend for you and some other people the game, the board game Blackstone Keep. So it's Warhammer Blackstone Keep. They do such a great job of combining the traditional D&D elements for fantasy, but you have the tech, and you have this updated science fiction, mythology and mythos. And that's the game that really got me thinking like, oh, this would be really. So I started working a little bit, on stuff like that. But I highly recommend it for anybody in our audience. It's just a fabulous game, and because I was like, I'm not really into science fiction board games, like let's just play Path. It was my Pathfinder group. I'm like, let's just play Pathfinder, and then we started playing.
mhm.
My friend was like, no, give it a chance, and
Yeah,
it's more of a board game rather than role playing, but there's a lot of role playing that you can do, and ended up like have cool characters, and really like the mystery behind like what you're trying to do was really cool. And I thought, man, this would make such a good like TV show, or
yeah,
it really got me thinking about those concepts. But I think you'd really enjoy it. It was It was really good.
Well, I mean, we're playing. I think for the last sort of 4 years now, maybe 3 years. We've done Rifts, Palladium Rifts.
Oh, I see. I want to play that so bad, and we
It's
just haven't gotten there
so it is completely unbalanced. It's the most ridiculous concept.
yet.
And again, because I enjoy the melding of technology and magic, I went techno wizard, so
Oh,
I
that's
can build
cool.
all the technology I want, and then I can put the spells in it.
Oh, that's
So
really cool.
I like, because again, I love that element, but I DM is homebrewed the world,
Oh,
and
that's
I'm really
awesome.
getting off topic now.
No, that's go ahead.
You the whole thing behind it is that the game is massively unbalanced. You have like normal damage that humans could take, and then you've got like mega damage that these mega creatures could take. And I am a normal creature, I can take normal damage, and all of the people in my group are mega damage. And so 100 like normal hit points for me is 1 hit point for them, which means that all
Oh
the bad guys that we fight are mega damage creatures. So if they hit me once, I
wow.
will die. It's like super, super intense
Yeah.
every time. I've got like 18 layers of magical armor just to make sure I don't constantly die.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it's such a good game. I absolutely adore it. And he brings in elements of everything. So we've got Elf as a class, but he wanted to make it a bit more in depth. So he brought it in as an Eldar. Now I've
Oh,
never
that's
played
cool.
Warhammer, but it let me sort of learn more about the Eldar themselves. I think if I ever did play Warhammer, it'd probably be Eldar now,
Yeah.
because I know a lot more about them than I used to, and I like that concept of bringing in just things from everywhere. Because when you stick to the books and only the books, you don't you don't get as much out of it. But
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
bring in things from everywhere, like he's full of Easter eggs. He's the Easter egg guy. He had a
Oh,
big
that's cool.
land snake monster called the Kobayashi Maru, and my friends were like, "Oh, well, let's kill it." And I'm like, "No, no, this is unwinnable.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
means we run, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to what he's saying."
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, my friend was talking to me about that game, and we unfortunately the pandemic, it's just been like
Yeah.
crazy, I feel like. And I said it was like this summer we need to, need to get more back to those types of games. So I get so many ideas from those types of games. And
Mm.
and
Mhm.
you're in the moment, and you have to make decisions. And as I was talking to my kids about, I was like, why, like, so we're doing like, slavery unit and stuff before Civil War. I was like, why was it that, slave owners did not want slaves to read? And one of my kids had he's like, you just get one idea and all of a sudden it just like catapults. And I talked about like Harriet Beecher Stowe, I read some of her work, and she's got that one quote about being in a tight place and not giving up. And I told him, I said, I was at this one part in my life where I was just like, everything was going wrong. And I was like, I read that one quote. It's 28 words. 28 words changed my life, and I talk about that all the time. One of the girls was like, well, it probably happens to you all the time in writing, right? I said, it happens all the time. You hear one idea and all of a sudden you had this whole entire fantasy or sci-fi world or whatever. And I think games are really important. I think a lot of people forget about, like
Yeah.
the whole point of, like, if we were just talked about last week with Evan Townsend and talking about, like actually having fun with writing. So if you're not having fun with writing, you should probably not be writing or not writing what you're writing. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, like, particularly for fantasy and sci-fi, like whenever I'm having trouble, we just go play a game,
Mhm.
and for whatever if I don't know if it's turned my brain off or there's a new idea that pops up, all of a sudden it's like something happens and it goes right back to it. So I think that's a really important thing to bring up, is that if you're struggling, like, go play some games with your friends.
Yeah.
Like, not only are you not going to worry about your writing, like, you'll get some ideas and it'll jumble in there. And my friend said, you can't turn off your writer's brain. I totally agree with her. So
Yeah, no, that's true. You can walk down the street and your brain narrates what you're doing in a writer's way. And you're like, as she turned the corner. And I'm like, why, brain? Why are you doing this? Why do you think this way?
yeah. Mine's always like if I see a broom or something and I have to pick it up, and then like somebody's attacking me, so I have to, like, bam, 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 and then attack, and then all of a sudden it's a fight scene. And my
Yeah, yeah,
friend
yeah.
watched me a couple of weeks ago. He's like, this is why I don't ask you to come help me clean out a garage. And he's
Yeah.
like, every time he's like, what scene was it this time? And I was like, well, I'm trying to figure out this one thing in my book. And he's just
Yeah.
like
And
rolls his eyes like,
the number of times people have walked in and I've been having a conversation with myself from the perspective of two different characters. And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, so, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm really good. And so that's not how it sounds in my book, I promise.
Yeah.
Someone will come in and be like, Jenny, you talking to yourself? I'm like, yeah. Thought it was weird. Googled it, everybody does it. So
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
I'd get
yeah.
better after that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do it all the time on the way to work. I might not do it like out loud, but like I'm listening, especially listening to music. Sometimes
Mm,
like the other day I was just getting going, and my wife and I were on our way here, and she was sleeping, and I was listening to something, and I was just like going through this whole like this whole scene in my head, and I was like, oh, that's so much better. And then by the time we got here, it was like probably like 10:30 at night, and I was like, jotting like notes
yeah, I
down
need,
so
I
I
need,
would
I need to
forget.
do this. I need to write
Yeah. When
this.
it's there. But yeah, totally. Um, what has been the hardest part in terms of writing or marketing your first trilogy?
Marketing, 100%,
Amen.
100%. It is so hard because uh, as people who write, as writers in general, we have a skill set that is designed to creating worlds and the slow burn and really making things interesting and crafting these stories. And then someone all of a sudden says, right, okay, now, but do that in just one line. And I go, yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I need at
Oh yeah.
least sort of 3 pages to tell you what's going on here and make you
Yeah.
want to read it. I can't do it in a line because my brain doesn't work that way. My brain works very much I need to be able to explain the different things. And so to somehow make like adverts and even things like interviews or tweets and things, and my brain goes, I don't know what to say when someone says, so tell us about your book, and I'm going, okay, how long have you got? Because
Yeah.
we could be here a while, because
Yeah.
I'll tell you the whole thing from start to finish, and I won't know when to stop. um, your marketing is difficult. I found some, because I mean, I'm self-published, and I did go through the process of having a publisher for a while, um, and it didn't work out. I didn't enjoy not having that level of control over my own work,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, which is why I pulled away from them. And the covers as they are now is the rebranding as I've done it.
Oh cool. They're
Um,
great.
thank you. I mean, it did take. It's been a long time. It's had 3 different covers, so like 8 different versions on Amazon, which has made the whole process even more complicated.
Oh
It's
yeah.
got
Yeah.
an audio book with the wrong cover that was done by the publisher that I can't have back.
Mm.
And so the process has been very up and down, but reaching a point where you go, okay, I've found someone that can do my cover art, and that's a big part of marketing, is having a product people want to look at
Yeah.
and go, ooh. So, and that cost me a fortune. And then the professional editing, because you see a lot of self-published authors who write their book, self-edit, then publish.
Yeah.
And I can't get my head around the concept of doing that, because I think if I'm going to put something out, it needs to be professional.
Oh
And
yeah.
it
Yeah.
needs to, I mean, I wrote these myself, and I don't deem myself to be like, Jonathan Swift or William Shakespeare.
Mhm.
I just write novels about dystopian science fiction. So I need someone to look over them and say, actually, try doing this, or let's change this bit, or you've spelled these 1,000 words wrong, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and so, finding a good copy editor and paying them a fortune to do that side of it. And all of a sudden I've got no money left for marketing. So
Yeah.
then I have to rely on organic reach. And then there's people talking about mailing lists, and people talk about Amazon adverts. And I'm going, I don't understand any of this. It's too much. So I broke it down. I've simplified every aspect of it, and I've gone, okay, so we'll get the covers first, and then we'll get the editing. And then, I mean, I formatted these myself. I had to learn that as a skill. um, then they got published, and then it was, how do I use Amazon ads? How do I use Facebook ads? Well, I just trolled Facebook for hours, and the more book ads I looked at, the more came up. And you quite quickly realize that there is this sort of theme to it, and there's this way of putting it across that make people want to click that link. But then your Amazon landing page has to be perfect. So then I was in like 5 different Facebook groups posting blurbs and getting feedback. And I think that was more difficult and more time consuming than the actual writing process itself.
Oh, for sure.
Um, I think the only thing I could say is, if you're going to become a self-published author, you need to know that once the writing process has ended, the marketing process has barely even begun.
Yeah.
You have a world of work ahead of you to get a professional product, which is going to be lost in a sea of all sorts. And you need to really show people that this is yours, and raise it up higher. It's got to be better than everyone else's, which is how my brain works.
No.
Which is a lot of pressure. But yeah, the marketing side of things, it's impossible. I hate it. I'm learning
Yeah.
begrudgingly.
Yeah. Well, somebody and I was talking about, we were talking about the advertising, and I think it was McGuire Fletcher had him on a couple weeks ago, and him and I talked on Twitter here and there, and he was like, yeah, when he was in a private conversation before we started talking about, the actual, before we started recording it, but he had it was like a great quote. He's like, when, you write your book and you think all these things, and it's like 1% of the work is done. He goes, then the marketing and actually selling it and getting people to read it is like the rest of it. And that's 99% of it. And I'm just like, that is so true. It's the iceberg effect, right? You think it, you see it, and it's like, you don't see the rest of it. And that's why I keep trying to tell people, I'm like, I'm like, trying, which I actually didn't realize that, so I asked my wife for a Kindle for Christmas. I usually don't like them. I like to read paperback, but I had found out that, you guys make 70% more or some crazy number on, a Kindle read than paperback. So I was always thinking, oh, paperback, there's more, blah, blah, blah. So I like those, but I'm like, I was like, I'll just do that, and then, get them. And then eventually, if I really like them, I'll just, pay for the paperback as well or something like that, or, for friends or something. But yeah, it's just, because I was trying to explain to somebody, they're like, oh, writing's so easy. And I'm like, really, really,
So
really?
expensive.
Yeah, I was like, really? I was like, so what books have you written? I was just like, and because they like DNF'd and then gave this, I was like, first of all, you DNF'd, like we're like social media friends. We're not really anymore because of this, but this drives me crazy where, he DNF'd and then left a really horrible 1-star review. And I'm like, you didn't finish the book, dude. Like, and he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I was like, it's fine to put if you didn't like it and why. I'm like, but I'm like, this person spent so much time, energy, and money into this, and you didn't finish. I said, what, you got 40% way through the book and then left a horrible review? I was like, that's not cool. Like, I'm like, it already shows on there that you DNF'd, I'm like, you don't have to leave a horrible review. I'm like, it's like, kicking somebody when they're down. And I was just trying to explain to him, the iceberg effect. And, then after he's like, oh, blah, blah. And he got a hold of me. He's like, oh yeah, I switched that, well, I'm thinking like, you have no idea, like, but then, people won't do that for like mom and pop joints, for businesses, but they'll do it, and I'm not saying you can't leave a bad review. I'm not saying you can't leave a bad review, but like, I just think that personally, if you didn't finish a book, it's already on there, like that is your review. Personally, I think that's your review.
I think that it says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that always gets me about the reviewing process is that people will put a lower review based on their idea of what they wanted versus what they got, rather than, I mean, I'm quite happy for people to review my book and go, actually, I found all these spelling mistakes, and the ending was too fast paced, which is a feedback I get from the first one a lot. The ending is very fast. I know this, it comes out of nowhere and suddenly the book's over. But it's when people will say things like, well, I didn't like that they did that. And I go, well, yeah, but they had to do that because that was the story that was happening. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah,
like a
totally.
difference between giving me good feedback and genuine stuff that wasn't good. But then when it's about character decisions and the direction that the book is going in, I'm sort of like, that's the story. That's not going to change. I'm sorry you didn't enjoy that. Maybe there's other books out there for you. And I always think that Amazon reviews should be very much more about the professional side of it. So does it look good? Is it formatted well? Is it edited well? And does it read well? Not the story concept itself. Please don't review me badly because you didn't like where the story went.
Well,
review me badly because it's written really badly.
yeah. But it's all over, right? Like these, like, I didn't like that this, like, because that's like Dirk Ashton has a famous DNF. Like a guy got to his second book and didn't like that a character died, and then they didn't finish the book, and it turns out that character didn't die, and it's a very famous one. DNF'd at 97%, and then left a 1-star review, and you're like, why didn't you just finish it? And then you would like you probably would have had way more, because you had way more on the line. Personally, you probably would have had a way better payoff, and it's just like,
it would have meant so much more to him.
It's like probably would have been his favorite book of all time,
like touch wood, I only have one star review so far. But they didn't actually review it. They just left the star. So I'm like, but why didn't you like it? Please tell me. I want to know.
That's even worse. I think that's even worse than them tearing it apart for stupid reasons. Like,
good. Did you just not like me?
Like
Can you find me on TikTok?
Well, that's been some people, right? Is that they've actually, have gone through with just people that they know and, or whatever, had a, some sort of like interaction, but I think
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous. Like I definitely, wish that there were more and more, you know, I wish the reviews were tighter between Goodreads and Amazon, because there's some I read and I'm like, and I'm one of those people where I'm like, I don't care. Like if I know you as an author and I, read your blurb and your product and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna give that a try. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like I don't care about the reviews. I never look at
Yeah.
reviews, honestly. I know some people do, because they're whatever. I'm like, if I love your cover, I love your blurb, I've talked to you and you're not a total a-hole, like I'll read your book and I'll review it. I'll finish it to
Yeah.
the end and I'll review it. And I'm one of those people where I'm like, even if I don't like it, I'll finish, because, there's some things that happen later where I've had books where I'm like, oh, okay. But then later on, I'm like, wow, this was like the best thing ever. And,
Yeah.
I think Malazan Book of the Fallen is one of the best ones for that. It's like I'm on page 800. I'm like, no. And then by the time I get 100 pages later, I'm like, this is the greatest book of all time, and I put all this
Yeah.
time and energy into it. But yeah, like there are other books that, I definitely feel that way. I don't know, I could be ranting all day on reviews and processes and stuff. I think that people need to just do it better. But so we're running out of time just for the Spotify and things, but it's totally fine because you said you're going to come back later, so we can just
Yeah.
I'll make a note for these other questions. We can kind of go from there. But in terms of number 9, though, I want to make sure that we get it out there. So do you have any promotions, contests, any news updates? You did say you were working on book 3. Really, like, what do you got going on before we let you go today?
I do giveaways of books, but I haven't done them for a little while because I used to do them on TikTok quite a lot, and then TikTok became very Marvel focused. So my intention is, once I get more merch again, because it was a lot of bookmark stickers and book like
Oh,
copies of the
cool.
book. So yeah, the idea is I'm going to do a big giveaway for when the 3rd book's released,
Oh, cool.
which will hopefully be early next year. We have the cover, we nearly have the story. We just need it finishing and a bit of editing.
Coming together.
But yeah, beginning of next year, that's going to happen.
Oh,
We're
cool.
working on the audio book for The Prison, which is the
Oh,
second book in the
sweet.
series. It's going to be narrated by the same lady that did the first book, so The Ark.
Cool.
But yeah, that's quite good. I am going to do a free book, 5-day free books on Amazon, so you can
Cool.
download The Prison for free, which again, it is the second book, and that's going to be when the 3rd book drops.
Oh, awesome.
So I will be putting more information on Twitter for that,
cool.
and Facebook, and probably TikTok as well. Maybe Instagram if I can remember how to use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully we're going back to conventions again next year as well for book signings.
Awesome.
Mainly UK based because I can't really get over to the US at the minute.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Oh, that's super
we sell
cool.
like we sell like 10,000 copies, I'll come over.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I'm glad that we're definitely having you back, for a second part of season 1. So that's exciting, that
Yeah.
we'll get you on calendar wise on one of those times that works really good for, promos and news updates, things like that. So that's really exciting. Like I said, I'll just save those other couple of questions and why don't you just start with those next time.
Yeah,
And
that sounds
like
great.
I said, we can kind of go from there. Really want to thank you for coming on. Our audience, thank you so much for coming in, checking out Jen Swift's books with us and having this time. And I know you guys really enjoy the sci-fi, so we're trying to get more science fiction authors on here. That's been a lot of people like, where are all the science fiction authors? I'm like, they just so happen that they're all at the end of the season 1. Like,
I'm here.
yeah, here she is. Here's Jen. All right, we had a couple
Hello.
other people that are on this, right before this. So this is kind of like sci-fi week, really, which is kind of fun for us, which was unintended. But sometimes, guys, in the audience, it's just how calendars work out and stuff like that. Especially with COVID and stuff. But I promise we'll get Jen back on here in the future and more sci-fi authors. You can find this video on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Just look up the Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. You can actually look up anything for me too, Daniel Coolbaugh, for any of those. And I'm always sharing for both of my accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, everything for the show. So make sure you guys also email me at scholarsofuma@gmail.com. We'll make sure, once again, we'll get all of Jen's, all those socials and everything in there. So you can go ahead in the description for YouTube and Spotify and check those out. You can find her on Twitter, Facebook, those kinds of places. So make sure you guys go, give her a follow, some likes, and start chatting up the books and things like that. If you guys have not had a second, though, please go check out her books in the description right now. as soon as I saw him, Jen, I was like, yep. So I've been waiting for my Kindle. But I'm like so excited for next month to get those going. So
I can't wait to hear what you think of
oh
them.
man, I'm like my friend we were talking about, I said I sent, book one to him, the description and blurb and stuff. And so we're actually I was waiting because we're actually trying to see if we might be doing like science fiction month for book club. It's to take a break from fantasy. So I'm trying to wait for him, but I told him I was like, I don't think I can wait because I'm kind of fantasied out right now, and I need more sci-fi in my life. So
I got you covered. I got you covered.
definitely high up on my list right now for science fiction. So awesome. Well, we really want again, Jen, thank you for coming on. I really look forward to, asking you some more of these questions in the future, particularly, once book 3 gets about, and hopefully we can help you with that whole process of on the red carpet and unveiling it and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
perfect. All right, well, we really want to thank you again for coming on. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to talking to you on Twitter, and I'll be sending you information for our next round of interviews with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.
Yeah, anytime you want to come talk about Star Trek or science fiction or anything, just let me know.
Okay? You've won me. I'm here.
Awesome. We have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you later. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.